All seemed lost. A pup trapped in ice, a remote reserve cut off by a blizzard, danger lurking everywhere. But just when hope was fading, something unbelievable brought humans and animals together. Subscribe now to experience this story of courage and rebirth. The wind sliced through the silent mountains of Alaska like blades of ice. Through the thick fog dancing over the landscape, a small figure struggled to stay afloat. A lynx cub, weak and disoriented, had fallen into a marsh hidden beneath the thin layer of newly formed ice. Each desperate movement sank it deeper, its strength rapidly fading as the icy water seemed to steal its life, little by little. A few yards away, isolated from the rest of the world, lived a solitary guardian, an elderly man named Garrett Thorne, who for years had dedicated himself to rehabilitating wild animals in a small, unknown reserve. His quiet routine was interrupted only by rare trails of travelers and sudden changes in the weather. On that silent day, the rustling of restless wings caught his attention. A raven landed on his window, cawing toward the marsh, as if calling for help. Intrigued, Garrett followed the raven to the edge of the bog. At first, everything seemed quiet, until the fragile meow of distress tore through the silence. Without hesitation, he improvised a long pole with braided ropes, but the cub was too far away. One wrong move, and he too could be swallowed by the treacherous ice. "Hold on, little one," Garrett whispered, his breath visible in the frigid air. His weathered hands, marked by years of hard work and dedication, gripped the makeshift rescue tool tightly. In this moment of tension, a female moose, previously shy and hostile, approached, drawn by the distressing sounds. In an unexpected act of complicity, she allowed the man to tie the rope to her antlers to increase the reach of the rescue operation. Combining strength and determination, the old man and the moose managed to pull the cub to the shore, but the small body was motionless and cold. Without wasting time, Garrett wrapped the lynx in warm cloths and ran back to the cabin. The fight for life was just beginning. Halfway there, a brutal blizzard descended upon the reserve, blocking access routes and making it impossible to seek external help. To make matters worse, the reserve's old stove, responsible for keeping the animals warm, suffered an electrical blackout. As the wind howled outside, a group of coyotes, sensing vulnerability, surrounded the cabin. Garrett had to improvise barriers and, with the help of the other animals in the reserve, managed to drive them away. "We've got to stick together," Garrett told his unlikely companions as he fortified the doors and windows of his rustic cabin, nestled in the Alaskan wilderness. Lisa Matthews, a wildlife photographer from Seattle, had been tracking the elusive moose for 3 days. The last thing she expected to find in this remote corner of Alaska was a cabin with smoke rising from its chimney. The unexpected blizzard had forced her to abandon her camp and seek shelter immediately. With visibility reduced to mere feet, ahead she stumbled forward, her camera equipment weighing her down. The strange behavior of the moose she had been following puzzled her. Instead of fleeing from the storm, it seemed to be moving with purpose toward something. Following at a safe distance, Lisa was led to a clearing where a small cabin stood, its windows glowing with warm light that barely penetrated the intensifying snowfall. Despite her extensive background in wildlife photography and her experiences, in extreme environments, Lisa had never felt so vulnerable. The temperature had dropped dramatically, and frostbite was becoming a real concern. She approached the cabin cautiously, only to hear what sounded like a mix of animal noises and a human voice inside. "Hello?" she called out, knocking firmly on the wooden door. "Is anyone there? I need shelter." Inside, Garrett froze at the sound of a human voice. It had been months since he'd spoken to anyone other than his animal companions. The coyotes had retreated temporarily, but the lynx cub was still unresponsive, despite his best efforts to warm it. He opened the door to find a woman with frost-covered eyelashes and blue-tinged lips. "Come in quickly," he urged, pulling her inside and shutting the door against the howling wind. "You're nearly frozen." Lisa stumbled into the warmth of the cabin, her gaze immediately falling upon the strange scene before her. An elderly man hunched over what appeared to be a small animal wrapped in blankets, and several other wild creatures, seemingly at ease in human dwelling. "What is this place?" she asked, her photographer's instinct immediately recognizing the uniqueness of what she was witnessing. "A sanctuary for those who need it," Garrett replied simply, turning his attention back to the Lynx Cub. "Including you, it seems. I'm Garrett Thorne." "Lisa Matthews?" she replied, slowly removing her frozen outer layers. "I was tracking a moose when the storm hit. It actually led me here." Garrett smiled knowingly. "Ah, Matilda. She's been helping me for years now. Today she helped save this little one from drowning in the marsh, but he's not doing well." Lisa moved closer, her training as a former veterinary assistant before becoming a photographer suddenly relevant again. "May I?" she asked, reaching for the bundle. Despite his initial reluctance to trust a stranger, Garrett recognized the professional confidence in her movements. He nodded, watching carefully as she examined the Lynx Cub. "He's in shock. Hypothermic," Lisa diagnosed. "We need to warm him gradually. Do you have any medical supplies?" "Limited," Garrett admitted. "The power's out, and my backup generator is failing. Most of my equipment is useless right now," Lisa thought quickly. "Body heat and warm water bottles might be our best option, and we need to elevate him slightly to help his breathing." As they worked together to save the small creature, the storm outside intensified. The windows rattled with each gust, and the sound of tree branches snapping under the weight of ice echoed through the forest. "How long have you been out here alone?" Lisa asked, trying to distract herself from the concerning sounds coming from outside. 15 years, Garrett replied, his eyes never leaving the cub. "After my wife Elaine passed, I couldn't bear the city anymore. I was a wildlife veterinarian at the Anchorage Zoo. One day, I just left. Found this place by accident while tracking an injured wolf. Never left." Lisa nodded, understanding the pull of solitude all too well. Her own career choice had been partly motivated by the desire to escape the complications of human relationships after a particularly painful divorce. "And the animals, they just accept you?" Garrett smiled, a warm expression that transformed his weathered face. "Not at first. It took years to earn their trust. Even now, some never fully accept human presence, but they know this is a safe place." A sudden crash from outside interrupted their conversation. Both rushed to the window to see a massive pine tree had fallen across the only path leading away from the cabin. "We're not going anywhere soon," Garrett observed grimly, "and I'm running low on firewood." Lisa's camera caught her eye, her primary tool for documenting the beauty and harshness of nature. Now, she wondered if she'd been given an opportunity to capture something far more remarkable. The story of a man who had created a unique bond with the wilderness. "If we survive this," she said slowly, "would you let me document your sanctuary? The world should know about places like this, people like you." Garrett's immediate reaction was to refuse. His sanctuary existed precisely because the world didn't know about it. But before he could respond, the Lynx Cub stirred slightly under. His hand a tiny sign of returning life. "Let's focus on surviving first," he said instead. "The storm, the coyotes, this little one's recovery, those are our priorities. Then we can discuss your photographs." As night fell, the temperature inside the cabin began to drop dangerously. The makeshift heating system they had created was failing, and the Lynx Cub's condition was deteriorating again. Outside, the howls of the coyote pack grew closer, sensing the vulnerability within the human shelter. "We need to make a decision," Garrett said gravely. My friend Jackson has a proper veterinary clinic about 5 miles northwest of here. In normal conditions, it would be an easy trek. In this blizzard, it's suicide, Lisa finished his thought. But staying here might mean the cub doesn't make it. Their eyes met across the dim light of the cabin, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Sometimes the greatest risks were worth taking for the smallest lives. But neither of them realized that this decision would set in motion events that would change not just their lives, but the future of the entire Alaskan wilderness they both cherished. There's something else you should know about this place, Garrett said quietly, moving toward a locked chest in the corner of the cabin. Something that makes it worth protecting at all costs. Garrett's hands trembled slightly as he unlocked the old wooden chest. The key, worn from years of use, turned with a heavy click that seemed to echo through the cabin. Lisa watched. Her photographer's curiosity piqued as the old man carefully lifted the lid. "I've never shown this to anyone," Garrett said, his voice barely above a whisper. But I need you to understand why this land must remain protected." From the chest, he withdrew a leather-bound journal and a small metal box. Opening the journal, he revealed page after page of meticulous notes, maps and drawings, documenting a complex ecosystem unlike anything Lisa had ever seen. 20 years ago, this entire region was slated for development. Luxury resorts, hunting lodges, the works, Garrett explained, pointing to survey markers on one of the hand-drawn maps. "My wife, Elaine, was an environmental scientist. She discovered something here that changed everything." He opened the metal box, revealing a collection of soil samples, pressed plants, and small vials of water. "This valley contains a microbiome that exists nowhere else on Earth. Plants with medicinal properties that haven't been catalogued by science. Animal behaviors that defy conventional understanding." Lisa leaned closer, her professional eye immediately noting the unusual coloration and structure of the plant specimens. "Is that why the animals here seem so cooperative, even across species?" Garrett nodded. "We believe something in the soil and water affects their neurochemistry. Elaine was studying it when she..." He paused, his eyes clouding with memory. "When she fell ill. The pharmaceutical company that owns most of the land around here has been trying to buy this plot for years. They know something special about this place, but they don't know exactly what." "And you've been protecting it all this time," Lisa murmured, the significance of his isolated existence suddenly clear. "Alone." A weak mewling from the Lynx Cub interrupted them. The small creature was struggling to breathe, its tiny body shivering despite the blankets. "We're running out of time," Garrett said, closing the journal and returning it to the chest. "For both the cub and this sanctuary, the company's lease on the surrounding land expires in 3 months. They're getting desperate." Lisa's mind raced, connecting pieces of information. The storm. Is it really just bad weather? Or could someone have known you were vulnerable? That the power might go out? Garrett looked at her sharply. "You think someone deliberately..." A loud thud against the cabin wall made them both jump. Outside, the howling had grown closer, but it wasn't just coyotes now. There was something else, something larger moving through the trees. "Get away from the windows," Garrett warned, reaching for his rifle. "Sometimes predators get desperate in storms like this." Lisa moved to the center of the room, cradling the Lynx Cub protectively. "We need to get to your friend's clinic. The cub won't last the night without proper care." Garrett nodded grimly. "There's an old snowmobile in the shed out back. If we can reach it without attracting attention, we might make it through the pass before the worst of the storm hits." "And if we can't?" Lisa asked. "Then we pray Matilda and her friends are feeling particularly protective tonight." As if summoned by his words, a loud bellowing sound came from just outside the cabin. The moose had returned, and she wasn't alone. Through the frosted window, Lisa could make out the silhouettes of several animals. The moose, a pair of wolves, and even the raven perched on a nearby branch. "Incredible," she whispered. "They're guarding us?" Garrett smiled, though tension still lined his face. This is what Elaine discovered. It's not just about rare plants or unusual soil chemistry. It's about communication, connection. Something in this valley has evolved to foster cooperation rather than just competition. He began gathering essential supplies, medical equipment, food, extra clothing. "We'll need to move quickly. The shed is about 50 yards from the back door. I'll go first, create a path. You follow with the cub." Lisa nodded, checking that her camera was secure in its waterproof case. If they survived this, she was determined to document everything, not just for her career, but because the world needed to know about places like this, especially if they were under threat. Garrett pulled on his heavy coat and reached for the door handle. "Ready?" Before Lisa could respond, a sharp crack split the air, the distinctive sound of a branch breaking under heavy weight. Not from an animal, from a human. "Someone's out there," Lisa whispered, instinctively stepping back from the windows. Garrett's expression hardened. "Stay here. Keep the cub warm." Despite Lisa's protests, he moved silently to the back of the cabin, disappearing into what appeared to be a storage room. Moments later, she heard the soft creak of another door, opening and closing. Alone with the ailing Lynx Cub, Lisa's mind raced with possibilities. Who would be out in a storm like this? Was it just a lost hiker seeking shelter? Or something more sinister connected to the land Garrett was protecting? 5 tense minutes passed before the front door suddenly burst open. Lisa grabbed the nearest object, a heavy cast-iron pan, and prepared to defend herself and the cub. But it was Garrett who stumbled in, supporting a half-frozen man in a high-tech winter parka. "Found him collapsed about 30 yards out," Garrett explained, helping the stranger to a chair near the stove. "Says his name is Daniel Blackwood." The man coughed violently, his face pale beneath his frost-nipped cheeks. "Thank you," he managed between coughs. "Got separated from my research team when the storm hit." "Research team?" Lisa questioned, lowering the pan but remaining wary. "What kind of research brings you out here in these conditions?" Daniel rubbed his hands together, trying to restore circulation. "Environmental impact assessment. I work for New Horizon Pharmaceuticals. We're evaluating the sustainability of the region for potential conservation initiatives." Lisa and Garrett exchanged a quick glance. New Horizon was the very company Garrett had mentioned, the one trying to acquire his sanctuary. "Quite a coincidence," Garrett said carefully, offering the man a cup of hot tea. "Your company has been trying to buy my land for years." Daniel's eyes widened slightly in recognition. "You're Garrett Thorne, the recluse who owns the Central Valley parcel." He looked around the cabin with new interest. "I've heard stories about you at company headquarters, but most people thought you were just a myth." "Not a myth," Garrett replied dryly. "Just someone who values privacy." The Lynx Cub chose that moment to let out a pitiful mewl, drawing Daniel's attention. "Is that? You're rehabilitating a juvenile lynx?" "Trying to," Lisa interjected, "but he needs professional medical care. We were about to attempt to reach a veterinary clinic nearby." Daniel set down his tea. "I have emergency medical training. Part of wilderness protocol for our research teams. Maybe I can help." Despite her instinctive distrust, Lisa recognized the genuine concern in the man's offer. She glanced at Garrett, who gave a slight nod. "We need to stabilize him before transport," Lisa explained, bringing the bundled cub closer. "He's hypothermic and possibly suffering from water in his lungs." As Daniel examined the lynx with surprising gentleness, Garrett pulled Lisa slightly aside. "Keep an eye on him," he whispered. "This is too convenient." Lisa nodded subtly. "I was thinking the same thing. But right now, we need all the help we can get." Outside, the storm continued to rage, but the animal sentinels remained. Through the window, Lisa could see Matilda the moose standing firm despite the punishing wind, her massive form a bulwark against whatever threats might lurk in the blizzard. Daniel looked up from the cub. "You were right about the water in his lungs. He needs antibiotics to prevent pneumonia and proper warming equipment. Your snowmobile idea is good, but not with the cub in this condition. The vibration could worsen his state. So we're trapped." Garrett concluded grimly. "Not necessarily." Daniel reached into his parka and pulled out a satellite phone. "Standard research equipment. If we can reach my team leader, they have a medical kit with everything we need." Garrett's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "And in return for this help, what does New Horizon want?" "My land?" Daniel held his gaze steadily. "Right now, I just want to save this cub. Company politics can wait for better weather." A tense silence filled the cabin, broken only by the howling wind and the cub's labored breathing. Finally, Garrett nodded. "Make your call. But understand this. What happens in this valley stays in this valley. Your company has been after my land for decades. I'm not about to let them use this situation to their advantage." Daniel dialed his satellite phone, but after several attempts, shook his head. "The storm's interfering with the signal. We need higher ground." "The ridge to the east would work," Garrett suggested reluctantly. "But it's a treacherous climb in these conditions." "I'll go," Lisa volunteered. "I'm an experienced climber, and I'm less essential here than either of you right now." Both men began to protest, but Lisa held up her hand. "The cub needs both of you. Daniel has medical training, and Garrett knows this land and these animals. I can follow the eastern trail to the ridge, make the call, and be back in 2 hours." Garrett looked torn, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of sending her out alone. "The trail isn't marked. You could easily get lost." "Then give me a guide," Lisa said, her gaze drifting to the window where the raven perched, watching them with intelligent eyes. Daniel looked confused. "A guide? You mean like a map?" Garrett and Lisa shared another knowing look. "Something like that," Garrett said cryptically. He moved to the door and opened it slightly, whistling a peculiar pattern. The raven immediately took flight, circling once before landing on the porch railing. "This is Winston," Garrett introduced, as if the bird were just another person. "He knows every inch of this valley. If you're serious about going, he'll show you the way." Daniel stared in disbelief. "You can't be serious. Birds don't lead people through blizzards." "This one does," Garrett replied simply. He turned to Lisa. "There's something else you should take. Something Elaine left behind." From a hidden compartment beneath a floorboard, Garrett retrieved a small vial of amber liquid. Elaine called it the essence. It's distilled from plants that only grow in the heart of the valley. If you're in danger, open it. The scent will bring help. Lisa accepted the vial, tucking it securely in an inner pocket of her parka. The weight of what she was undertaking suddenly felt immense. Not just a dangerous trek through a blizzard, but a step into the heart of whatever mystery surrounded this sanctuary. "Be careful who you trust," Garrett whispered, pressing something else into her hand, the key to his wooden chest. "If anything happens to me, make sure her research survives." Before Lisa could process the implication of his words, a loud cracking sound came from outside, this time unmistakably the sound of a tree giving way. The entire cabin shuddered as something massive struck the roof. "Go now," Garrett urged, pushing her toward the back door. "We'll handle things here and keep the cub stable. Just hurry." As Lisa stepped out into the howling storm, with only a raven as her guide and a mysterious vial as her protection, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was much more at stake than the life of one lynx cub. Something ancient and powerful was awakening in this valley, and perhaps Daniel's arrival was no coincidence at all. The blizzard engulfed Lisa as soon as she left the relative safety of the cabin. Wind-driven snow stung her exposed skin like countless tiny needles, and visibility extended barely beyond her outstretched arm. Only the occasional caw of Winston the raven, somehow audible above the howling wind, provided any sense of direction. "This is insane," she muttered to herself, pulling her scarf tighter around her face. Following a bird through a blizzard, to save a lynx cub while running from pharmaceutical spies. Yet something deeper drove her forward, perhaps the same instinct that had first drawn her to wildlife photography, the desire to witness and preserve something pure and untamed in an increasingly controlled world. Winston swooped down periodically, landing on nearby branches just long enough for her to reorient herself before disappearing again into the swirling white. The eastern ridge loomed somewhere ahead, invisible through the storm, but growing steeper beneath her boots. After what felt like hours, but was likely only 40 minutes of grueling ascent, Lisa reached a relatively sheltered outcropping. Winston settled on a twisted pine, shaking snow from his glossy feathers. "Is this it?" Lisa asked the bird, feeling slightly ridiculous for expecting an answer. To her surprise, Winston bobbed his head in what appeared to be affirmation before taking flight again, circling the area as if standing guard. Lisa pulled out Daniel's satellite phone, praying it would find a signal. As she waited for it to connect, she surveyed the valley below. From this elevation, she could occasionally glimpse patches of landscape through breaks in the storm. The dark rectangle of Garrett's cabin, the frozen marsh where the Lynx Cub had nearly drowned, and beyond that, something she hadn't noticed before, the faint outline of what appeared to be vehicle tracks leading toward a clearing in the forest. The phone suddenly chimed, indicating a connection. Lisa quickly dialed the emergency contact number Daniel had provided. After several rings, a woman's crisp voice answered. "New Horizon Research Division. This is Lisa Matthews. I'm calling on behalf of Daniel Blackwood. He's stranded in a cabin in Whisper Valley with an injured animal and the property owner, Garrett Thorne. We need emergency medical supplies." A pause. "Please verify your location coordinates." Lisa hesitated, suddenly wary of providing exact information. Northern section of Whisper Valley, approximately 5 miles from Raven's Peak. Daniel knows. The location. Another pause, longer this time. "Ms. Matthews, please stay where you are. A team is already en route to your location. They should arrive within the hour." Already en route? Lisa questioned. "How could they know where to go before I called?" The line went silent for several seconds. "Standard protocol. When field researchers miss check-in, please remain in place for extraction." Before Lisa could respond, the connection dropped. She stared at the phone, unease spreading through her. Something wasn't right. How could a rescue team already be on their way? And why had the woman called it an extraction rather than a rescue? Winston suddenly let out a harsh alarm call, diving close to Lisa's head before shooting off toward the west. Following his gaze, Lisa spotted movement in the trees below, the unmistakable beam of high-powered flashlights cutting through the storm, moving with purpose toward Garrett's cabin. "No, no, no," she whispered, hastily pocketing the phone and beginning her descent. This wasn't a rescue team, at least not one coming to help them. Whatever New Horizon wanted from Garrett's land, they clearly weren't above exploiting the emergency to get it. Halfway down the slope, Lisa lost her footing on an ice-covered rock and tumbled several yards before managing to stop herself. Pain shot through her ankle, and warm blood trickled down her forehead where she'd struck a protruding branch. Dazed and injured, she struggled to regain her orientation in the whiteout conditions. Winston was nowhere to be seen. The tracks she'd made on her ascent were already filling with fresh snow. Panic threatened to overwhelm her as the realization set in that she might freeze before finding her way back. With trembling fingers, she reached into her pocket and withdrew the small vial Garrett had given her. "The essence," he'd called it. "If you're in danger, open it." Her survival instinct battling with skepticism, Lisa uncapped the vial. A scent, unlike anything she'd ever experienced, filled the air around her, earthy and sweet, with notes of herbs and something indefinable that seemed to cut through the freezing air. Within moments, the pain in her ankle subsided to a dull throb, and her mind cleared. More remarkably, the snow directly around her seemed to lighten, creating a small pocket of improved visibility. Lisa looked up to find Winston had returned, perched on a branch just ahead. But he wasn't alone. A fox with unusual silver-tipped fur stood nearby, watching her with intelligent eyes. Unbelievable, Lisa breathed, her photographer's instinct momentarily overriding her fear as she reached for her camera. The fox approached cautiously, sniffing the air where the essence had spilled. Then, to Lisa's astonishment, it turned and began walking slowly down slope, stopping to look back at her expectantly. "Are you helping me?" she asked incredulously. In response, the fox continued forward, creating a path that Lisa could follow. Winston flew alongside, occasionally landing to check her progress as she limped after them. Guided by this improbable escort, Lisa made faster progress than she would have thought possible with her injury. Soon she could make out the glow of Garrett's cabin through the trees. But something was wrong. Too many lights, moving with mechanical precision around the perimeter. Staying low and using the storm as cover, Lisa crept closer. 4 snowmobiles were parked nearby, each bearing the New Horizon logo. 6 people, in Arctic gear, moved with military efficiency, setting up what appeared to be scientific equipment around the cabin. From her hidden vantage point, Lisa could see into one of the cabin windows. Garrett stood rigidly by the fireplace, gesturing emphatically as he spoke to someone out of view. The Lynx Cub lay motionless on the table, medical equipment now attached to its tiny body. Of Daniel, there was no sign. Lisa needed to get closer, to understand what was happening. The fox and Raven remained with her, seemingly aware of the need for stealth. Using natural cover and the disorienting effect of the storm, she managed to position herself beneath one of the cabin's side windows. "Already have legal means to acquire this land, Mr. Thorne," a woman's voice said firmly. The same voice Lisa had heard on the satellite phone, "but we're willing to be generous given the circumstances. Full medical care for the Lynx, continued access for your rehabilitation work, and a consulting position with our research team." "In exchange for what exactly?" Garrett's voice was cold with suspicion. "Full disclosure of your wife's research, exclusive harvesting rights to the botanical specimens, and unrestricted access to study the microbiome she documented." A bitter laugh from Garrett. "So you do know what's here. I wondered how much Daniel had already told you." "Dr. Blackwood has been instrumental in narrowing down the location of the primary source," the woman replied. "Though I must say, his sentimental attachment to the wildlife has been inconvenient at times." Lisa risked a peek through the frosted glass. The woman speaking was tall and immaculately dressed, despite the wilderness setting, her silver-streaked hair pulled back. In a severe bun, Daniel stood beside her, his expression unreadable as he monitored the Lynx Cub's vital signs. "The ecosystem works as a whole," Garrett was saying. "You can't just extract the elements you want without destroying everything Elaine worked to protect. This valley evolved in isolation for thousands of years. The plants, the animals, the soil, they're all connected. Precisely why it's so valuable," the woman agreed. "Imagine the applications, medicines that work in harmony with the body instead of forcing it into submission. Agricultural solutions that encourage cooperation between species rather than endless pesticide escalation, even psychological treatments derived from whatever creates the unusual bonding behaviors in the wildlife here. And New Horizon would own it all," Garrett concluded flatly. "Patents, profits, and power, while the source is stripped bare. The woman sighed dramatically, always so melodramatic, you environmentalist types. We're not villains, Mr. Thorne. We're scientists, just like your wife was. The difference is we have the resources to actually apply these discoveries globally. Elaine understood the risks, Garrett countered. She kept her research limited, for a reason. Some things aren't meant to be mass-produced or commercialized. A new voice joined the conversation, Daniels. He's right, Dr. Harlow. My preliminary analysis suggests that the compounds lose efficacy when removed from the valley's ecosystem. They begin degrading almost immediately. Dr. Harlow shot him a warning look. Which is precisely why we need unfettered access to study the entire system in situ. The board has already approved construction of a research facility. Lisa had heard enough. New Horizon wasn't just after Garrett's land. They wanted to industrialize what might be one of the last truly unique ecosystems on the planet. She needed to get back to civilization, to expose what was happening here before it was too late. As she backed away from the window, her injured ankle gave way. She fell with a muffled cry, knocking over a stack of firewood. The sound, though, partially masked by the storm, was enough to alert the New Horizon team. Check the perimeter. Dr. Harlow's sharp command carried through the walls. Lisa scrambled to her feet, ignoring the searing pain. The fox darted ahead, leading her toward the trees as Winston created a diversion, diving at the heads of the New Horizon personnel, who emerged from the cabin. There, by the eastern tree line, someone shouted. Beams of light swept the area as Lisa plunged into the forest. The storm, which had been her enemy, now became her ally, obscuring her tracks almost as quickly as she made them. Still, she could hear the whine of a snowmobile starting up behind her. The fox led her deeper into the woods, following a path that seemed impossible to detect in the blizzard. Just when Lisa thought her strength would give out, they emerged. At the edge of a frozen stream, the fox stopped, looking at her expectantly. "What now?" Lisa gasped, her breath coming in painful clouds. In response, the fox began pawing at the snow beside a large boulder, uncovering what appeared to be a metal hatch. Lisa brushed away more snow to reveal a rusted handle. Pulling with all her remaining strength, she managed to lift the heavy door, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. The sound of the approaching snowmobile grew louder. With no time to hesitate, Lisa swung her legs into the opening. The fox watched impassively as she began her descent. "Thank you," she whispered to the creature, feeling simultaneously foolish and profoundly grateful. Just before closing the hatch above her, Lisa saw Winston arrive, landing beside the fox. The two animals stood sentinel as she pulled the door shut, plunging herself into total darkness. The narrow metal ladder led down about 15 feet before her boots touched solid ground. Lisa fumbled for her phone, activating its flashlight, to reveal a low tunnel stretching ahead. The walls were a mixture of rough-hewn rock and timber supports, some kind of old mining operation, perhaps. With no other options, she began following the tunnel, hoping it would lead somewhere safe. After about 10 minutes of careful progress, the passage widened into what appeared to be a small underground chamber. Old equipment lay scattered about, covered in decades of dust. But what caught Lisa's attention was a wooden desk against the far wall, atop which sat a familiar object, a leather-bound journal identical to the one Garrett had shown her. Approaching cautiously, Lisa shined her light on the journal's cover. Embossed in faded gold letters was a name, Elaine Thorne. This was her workspace, Lisa murmured in surprise, her secret laboratory. The journal was only one of many. Shelves lined with similar volumes covered one entire wall of the chamber. Specimen jars, carefully labeled and sealed, occupied another. Maps, charts, and photographs were pinned to a large corkboard, yellowed with age but meticulously preserved in the cool, dry, underground environment. Lisa opened the journal on the desk. finding it dated 15 years earlier, after Garrett had claimed Elaine had passed away. The handwriting was precise, scientific, but filled with an unmistakable wonder. The symbiosis extends beyond anything previously documented in ecological literature. It's not just cooperation, it's communication across species barriers that science has always considered impenetrable. The chemical compounds in the soil fungi appear to create a pathway for information exchange that transcends conventional understanding. The animals aren't just coexisting, they're conversing in a language of molecules and instincts that we've only begun to decipher. Lisa turned the page, her hands trembling with excitement and disbelief. G believes I should publish, bring this to the scientific community. But I've seen how discovery leads to exploitation. The Valley isn't ready for the world, and the world certainly isn't ready for what the Valley represents. A complete rewriting of our understanding of ecological relationships. For now, this knowledge must remain protected, even if it means my work remains in shadows. Flipping further through the journal, Lisa found entries dated progressively later, the most recent only 6 months ago. Elaine Thorne was alive, or had been very recently. A noise from the tunnel entrance startled Lisa from her reading. She quickly closed the journal and extinguished her light, pressing herself against the wall in the darkness. Footsteps approached slowly, accompanied by the beam of a flashlight sweeping across the chamber. "Lisa," a familiar voice called softly. "It's Daniel. I'm alone, I promise." She remained silent, unconvinced. "I know you're here," he continued, his voice echoing slightly in the underground space. "Winston led me to you. I'm not with Harlow. Not really. I've been working undercover for the Wildlife Conservation Association for months." Still, Lisa didn't respond. The revelation about Elaine had left her unsure whom to trust. Daniel sighed, the sound heavy with exhaustion. "Garrett told me to give you a message. The essence only responds to those the Valley trusts. He said you'd understand." It was true. The mysterious vial had worked for her when she was in danger. If Daniel had been sent by Garrett and guided by Winston, perhaps she could risk trusting him. "Over here," she finally replied, switching her light back on. Daniel approached, his expression relieved but grim. "We don't have much time. Harlow has called for reinforcements, a full extraction team with permits and legal documentation. They're planning to claim the entire valley under eminent domain for critical pharmaceutical research in the national interest." "They can't do that," Lisa protested, gesturing to the research surrounding them. "This place is unique. It needs protection, not exploitation." "That's exactly why I infiltrated New Horizon," Daniel explained, examining his surroundings with wonder. "We'd heard rumors about the valley for years, but couldn't prove anything without access. When they recruited me for the research team, it was the perfect opportunity." He paused, his gaze falling on the journal Lisa had been reading. "Is that Elaine's research? All of it, going back decades? And Daniel, she's alive, or was very recently. Garrett lied about her passing." Daniel's expression shifted from surprise to understanding. "Not necessarily. According to New Horizons intelligence, Elaine Thorne suffered a terminal illness 15 years ago. Records show she was admitted to a hospital in Anchorage but never checked out. The assumption was that she had passed away." "Then who wrote these?" Lisa tapped the journal dated just months earlier. Daniel shook his head. "I don't know. But right now, we need to focus on getting this research to safety before Harlow finds this place. And we need to get back to Garrett and the Lynx Cub." "How is the cub doing?" Lisa asked, suddenly remembering the original reason for their dangerous journey. "Stabilized for now. Harlow brought proper medical equipment, I'll give her that much. But she's using the cub as leverage against Garrett. As long as it needs ongoing care, he's forced to cooperate." Lisa began gathering the most recent journals. "We need to take these. They're evidence of whatever is happening in the valley, proof that it deserves protection. There's more, Daniel said, lowering his voice further. According to what I've overheard, New Horizon isn't just interested in the medicinal properties of the plants here. They believe there's something about this valley that enhances cognitive function, possibly even psychic abilities in certain individuals. Lisa thought of the unusual connection Garrett seemed to have with the animals. Is that even possible? I don't know, Daniel admitted. But Harlow mentioned something called Project Whisper. Apparently, early tests on compounds derived from plants in this region showed promise for enhancing intuitive reasoning and empathic response. The military applications alone would be worth billions. A distant rumble interrupted their conversation, not thunder, but the sound of heavy machinery. They're not waiting for permits, Daniel said grimly. We need to get back to the cabin. Lisa quickly packed as many journals as would fit in her backpack, along with several specimen vials similar to the essence Garrett had given her. There's got to be another exit. Elaine wouldn't have created a workspace with only one way out. Daniel nodded, already searching the perimeter of the chamber. Behind a stack of equipment, they discovered a narrow passage leading upward. Unlike the entrance tunnel, this one appeared to be partially natural, a fissure in the rock that had been widened just enough for a person to navigate. It's going to be tight, Daniel warned, examining the passage with his flashlight. We don't have a choice, Lisa replied, already squeezing into the opening. The ascent was claustrophobic and treacherous, the rough stone walls scraping against their clothes and skin. As they climbed, after what felt like an eternity, Lisa felt a rush of cold air from above. Pushing through a tangle of roots and frozen soil, she emerged into the forest once more. Daniel followed moments later, and they found themselves in a dense thicket about a half-mile from where Lisa had entered the underground chamber. The storm had subsided somewhat, allowing glimpses of the night sky between swirling snow clouds. Which way to the cabin? Lisa asked, getting her bearings. Before Daniel could respond, a soft growl came from behind them. They turned to find themselves face to face with a massive grey wolf, larger than any Lisa had ever photographed or seen in the wild. Its amber eyes seemed to glow in the darkness as it regarded them calmly. Don't move, Daniel whispered, though the wolf showed no signs of aggression. To their astonishment, the wolf simply turned and began walking slowly through the trees, stopping to look back at them with what could only be described as expectation. Just like the fox, Lisa murmured. It wants us to follow. This is beyond anything in scientific literature, Daniel said, or evident in his voice, despite their dangerous situation. With no better option, they followed the wolf through the forest. Within minutes, they could see lights through the trees, not the warm glow of Garrett's cabin, but the harsh fluorescent beams of industrial equipment. New Horizon had wasted no time beginning their operation. The wolf led them to a vantage point overlooking a clearing where several large vehicles now stood. Workers in New Horizon uniforms unloaded equipment while armed security personnel patrolled the perimeter. In the center of it all, a heated tent had been erected, bright light spilling from its entrance. There's Harlow, Daniel whispered, pointing to the tall woman directing operations from just outside the tent. And look, they've moved the Lynx Cub there. Through the open tent flap, Lisa could see the small form of the cub, now attached to several medical devices. Garrett sat beside it, his posture defeated as he gently stroked its fur. We need a diversion, Lisa said, her mind racing. Something to create confusion while we get to Garrett and the cub. The wolf beside them made a soft huffing sound, almost like a sigh. Then, without warning, it threw back its head and howled, a long, haunting cry that echoed through the valley. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, from all directions, answering howls rose into the night. My God, Daniel breathed as shadows began moving through the trees surrounding the clearing. The entire pack. Not just wolves, Lisa realized as the animals emerged from the forest. Moose, foxes, lynx, even a bear that should have been in hibernation. Dozens of creatures normally territorial or even predatory toward one another, moving with singular purpose toward the New Horizon camp. From above, Winston and other ravens descended, dive-bombing the workers who scattered in confusion. The security team drew weapons, but Harlow shouted orders not to fire. "The subjects, don't harm the subjects!" In the confusion, Lisa and Daniel slipped down the slope toward the tent. The wolves had created a perimeter, not attacking, but effectively, blocking escape routes as smaller animals wreaked havoc among the equipment. Wires were chewed through, fuel lines punctured, and navigation systems destroyed by precise, almost surgical interventions. They reached the tent unnoticed and ducked inside to find Garrett already disconnecting the medical equipment from the Lynx Cub. "You found Elaine's lab," he said without looking up, somehow knowing it was them. "She's alive, isn't she?" Lisa asked, helping him wrap the cub in warm blankets. Garrett's eyes filled with emotion. "Not in the way you think. Come, we don't have much time." With the Lynx Cub secured in Garrett's arms, they slipped through the chaos of the animal diversion. Harlow shouted orders as equipment sparked and workers scattered in panic. "This way," Garrett directed, leading them not toward his cabin, but deeper into the valley. Despite his age, he moved with surprising agility, following a path visible only to him. They traveled for nearly an hour, animals appearing and disappearing among the trees, as if passing them from one territory to another in a coordinated relay. "I've never seen anything like this," Daniel murmured, watching a pair of foxes hand off their guiding duty to a mother bear and her cub. The terrain grew increasingly rugged, the forest giving way to rocky outcroppings. Finally, they reached a sheer cliff face covered in thick vegetation, despite the winter season. Garrett pushed aside vines to reveal a narrow fissure in the rock. Inside, the temperature immediately warmed. The passage widened into a vast cavern, illuminated by bioluminescent fungi, bathing everything in blue-green light. At the center lay a small lake of crystal-clear water, bubbling with hot springs. Around its shores grew plants unlike any Lisa had seen before, evolutionary hybrids or entirely unique species. "The heart of the valley," Garrett said softly, carrying the Lynx Cub toward the water's edge. "Untouched for millennia." Gently, he unwrapped the Lynx Cub and bathed its small body in the warm water. The cub immediately stirred, its eyes opening with a weak mewl. "The healing properties are remarkable," Garrett explained, "but limited to the valley itself." A sound from the cavern entrance interrupted them. Dr. Harlow stood in the passage, a tranquilizer gun trained on them with security personnel flanking her. "So this is it," Harlow said, surveying the hidden ecosystem with naked ambition, "the source of everything." "This place isn't meant for exploitation," Daniel said firmly. "It's a complete ecosystem that's evolved in isolation for thousands of years." "Which makes it all the more valuable," Harlow countered. "Do you have any idea what pharmaceutical applications could come from this?" "The moment you bring in extraction equipment, you'll disrupt the balance," Garrett warned. "We'll figure it out." "That's what science does," Harlow dismissed. "You won't," came a new voice from the shadows, a woman's voice, firm and clear. A figure emerged from behind a cluster of flowering plants. She was older, silver-haired, but moved with purpose, her eyes sharp with intelligence. "Elaine," Garrett breathed, his expression a mixture of pain and love. "Dr. Elaine Thorne? We thought you were dead," Harlow recovered quickly. "In many ways, I am," Elaine replied cryptically. She moved beside Garrett and placed her hand in the water. Where her fingers touched, the bioluminescent glow intensified, spreading in pulsing rings. 15 years ago, I was dying," Elaine explained, her voice resonating from the walls. "I came here to say goodbye, But the valley had other plans. I collapsed by this lake, and when I awoke, I was changed. The microbiome didn't just heal me, it integrated with me. My consciousness became interwoven with the ecosystem itself. Animals began to appear at the entrance, wolves, bears, moose, gathering in impossible harmony. Winston flew in to perch near Lisa. "I am the valley's guardian now," Elaine said simply. "Not its owner, but its voice. What you feel here, the peace, the connection, the healing, these aren't resources to be extracted. They're gifts to be experienced and protected." The lynx cub, remarkably recovered, moved toward Elaine, rubbing against her leg. "This is some kind of trick," Harlow insisted, though her certainty faltered. "You know better," Elaine replied gently. "You've studied the samples. You've seen the effects." She stepped forward, and the security personnel lowered their weapons, seemingly unable to maintain their threatening stance in her presence. "What do you want?" Harlow asked. "For you to understand what's truly valuable here. Not patents, but knowledge, a new paradigm for how life can exist in harmony. That's why you've stayed hidden," Lisa realized. "To understand your connection to it," Elaine nodded. "I wasn't sure what I had become. I was no longer just Garrett's wife, but something both more and less than human." Garrett reached for her hand. "You could have told me. Whatever you became, I would have understood." "The valley has chosen its guardians," Harlow finally conceded, lowering her gun. "What would you say to a collaborative, conservation-focused approach with ethical guidelines?" "The knowledge is there," Elaine gestured to Lisa's backpack containing the journals. "Not through extraction, but through measured interaction with the living system." 6 months later, the Whisper Valley Cooperative Research Center opened, a living classroom where scientists, conservationists, and indigenous knowledge keepers worked side by side. The lynx cub, now adolescent and strong, had become its unofficial mascot, aptly named Guardian. Garrett and Elaine had become the center's heart, its storytellers, passing on the wisdom of a place that had transformed them both. Lisa's photographs hung on the wall of the research center. The lynx cub, Winston the raven, and the silver fox gathered peacefully at the edge of the hidden lake, living proof that another way of being in relationship with the natural world wasn't just a dream, but a possibility waiting to be remembered. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Garrett, Elaine, and the extraordinary Whisper Valley has touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it by clicking to your left. If you enjoyed this tale of connection and redemption, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. We bring unique stories daily that explore life's complexity. What moved you most about the Guardian Lynx's journey?